Okay, welcome to the Halava Fantasy Football League Week 4 recap? Yeah, Week 4 recap. Sorry it's a little bit late, but try to do a quick one before tomorrow's Thursday night game. I guess the biggest news that came out was maybe the concussion with Tua Tagovailoa. That was kind of like a big news. It seems like it's so long ago, but it was pretty controversial with him getting hurt on Sunday, looking all woozy, and them saying it's only a back injury, only for him to have that concussion on Thursday night, and him with the fingers, which kind of like had that brain injury kind of, what do you call it? Thing. Yeah, so that was the big news. He got hurt. And anyways, we'll just do a recap for us. Today's drink is a perfect martini. The only difference between this and a regular martini is the introduction of sweet vermouth. A regular martini is gin and dry vermouth, and then either a lemon twist, orange twist, or olives. In this case, the perfect martini has equal parts of dry and sweet vermouth, so it adds a little sweet component to it. So it's pretty good. If you want to add a little bit of sweetness without being too sweet, it's pretty good. I added olives just because I love olives. Anyway, let's get into the recaps. This has a pit. First matchup, me versus Brad. This was a pretty close game. Could have been much closer. Could have went either way. Brad gave up on Russell Wilson and went all in with Mariota, and Mariota only rewarded him with only 6.06 points. Dortch got only 1.58. Holland's only 4.8. Najee Harris 9.2. And then in the meantime, Russell Wilson finally busted out with a 29.08. So with those kind of scores, how did he lose? Well, Josh Reynolds came through. Really smart pickup because all the receivers for, like the top 3 receivers for the Lions all went down. So Reynolds was a good pick. He got him 17.6. McPherson 11.6. And then he played Philly D, which was strong. In my case, Metcalf was good. Pickens was a good pickup. And even though I lost Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was out, Swift was out. So I had to play Pollard, who was bad. And Javonte Williams tore his ACL, I think. So he's out for the year. Breece Hall was respectable. Gay was respectable. Baltimore D was kind of sad at 5.6. But they're still one of the upper defenses, so I got to stick with them. If you look at my bench, this game would have definitely went a different direction if I had started Jared Goff instead of Matthew Stafford. But that's the way it goes. Brad gets his first win of the year. Congrats, Brad. Okay, next up. Eric versus Mike. Battle of the undefeated. Eric was... What was your record, Eric? I think Mike was 3-0 and Eric was 2-0-1. Eric pulls out this win. Mike had Hurts, who's one of the better quarterbacks, but didn't do so good in this game, not fantasy-wise, even though they won against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville was undefeated prior to this. I think Philly's the last one who's undefeated, so they're a really strong team. Mike Williams, 15.5, really good. Bateman, only 3.2. He's questionable, so I don't know if he got hurt. James Robinson, only 3.7. So that's kind of a letdown this week. Fournette, 15.2. Kelsey strong, 19.7. Curtis Samuel, only 5.8, but I would play him too. Damian Harris was actually pretty good. That was the only other guy who might have helped you, but I don't know if that's enough to beat Eric. Eric had really strong games from Miles Sanders, who had 31.3 13.3. Nick Chubb continues to be, I think, one of the upper echelon backs, if not the best right now. Burrow had 22.58, which is decent. Waddle had his second straight. Actually, Waddle is trending down now, only down to 4.9, but that might be because the Tua's down. Kyle Pitts only given 3. Dalvin Cook only 11.6. Koo has been one of the better kickers. He might be the best kicker, 13.1. And NDD only 33.6. Jerry Jacobs on his bench had 34.8. And White from Tampa Bay was a really strong 15.4. And sorry about the dog. Alan Lazard was actually a pretty strong receiver sitting on his bench. One moment. So Eric knocks Mike off of first place, and I think Eric takes first place because he's still undefeated by virtue of still having just a tie. So next up is Darren versus Gary. I think Darren gets his first win, edging out Gary. Pretty close score, 92.12 to 85.92. Derek Carr had 14.32. Cooper Kupp was strong, 19.2. Mike Evans had a huge game, 26.3. Ezekiel Elliott only 11. Cam Akers only 2.1. Irv Smith 3.8. Amari Cooper 1.4. Justin Tucker was strong as usual, 12.3, and his LA defense was only 1.7. But Gary, Gabe Davis had only 1.8, so that really hurts. Kirk Cousins had 16.42. Devontae Adams is actually being respectable, but post-trade, definitely on the losing side of the trade for now. Still starting the 2 running backs for Green Bay, which, let's see, compared to the bench, I mean, I guess he's starting all running backs now, which works out 14.6, 10.6, and Stevenson only 12.3. Mark Andrews had a bad game, 2.5. Looks like Ravens were only running around. And then his defense tied the Rams at 1.7. On his bench, Algier, I think he's a rookie, 11.9. He's a decent, but he would only got an extra point if he started him over AJ Dillon. And then Trevor Lawrence had 11.96. So kind of pedestrian for the quarterbacks. Mostert had 12.28, so that would have been a good one to flex in, but still he had enough to get, I think, his first win of the year. So I think it's his first win of the year. So congrats, Darren, on that. Next up, Blitz Ritz versus Mediocre Minions. Richie actually did decent, and he would have beat like many of the other teams outside of a few others, but he got matched up against Jeremy, who was a strong team at this point in time. Richie, Kyler Murray, busted out with 27.38, outplaying Justin Herbert for Jeremy at 12.24. Chase outplays Diggs, 10.10 to 8.2. Kirk outplays Pittman, 7.4 to 4.6. So it looks good so far for Richie until you get to Kamara, who gave him a donut. Cordero Patterson had 10.7, and it looks like Patterson is now on the IR. So Jeremy's going to have to scramble and fix that. Dameon Pierce, look at that. I think he's the top rookie running back at this point with that 24.3. And then Derrick Henry, again, started to blow up after the trade. So the timing of the trade looks really good for Jeremy. McLaurin only had 2.5. Mayer had a strong kicking game at 18.5. And Dallas had 11.2, respectable D. But take a look at Jeremy's tight end. Hawkinson had 35.9. So that whole thing with the Detroit Lions, no Swift, no Amon-Ra St. Brown, no DJ Chark, no problem. Because all the other Lions just stepped up, and the Lions continue to be the best offense in the NFL as scoring-wise. And so they make great, they're great for fantasy. So Suckup had 9 points, which is pretty good, and Chargers had 9.1. As far as their bench goes, anything outstanding? Penny had 29.9. So if he had started him in place of Singletary or Patterson, he would have had even more points. And then for Richie's bench, Cooks was pretty decent at 15.2. So he has some quality there. He's going to have to shuffle it around. Kamara is questionable for the week, so you're going to have to find out if he's going to play. But that really hurt Richie, who might have had a chance had he at least not played Kamara. All right, next up. Brownsville Jets versus Captain Morgs. Morgan lost to Mike B. Lamar Jackson did not have his standard running game this time around, and it was a tale of two halves. It looked good because they were dominating the Bills in the first half, and then in the second half it turned around and all the running went elsewhere, so it hurt them both as a team and for him in fantasy. But that was still the Jets did pretty solid. It was kind of interesting because head-to-head, they had the quarterbacks going up against each other, and it made it interesting for the course of the game. Allen won that matchup with 27.52. Deebo Samuel had a huge game Monday night against the Rams. So I think at that point on Monday, that's where you see Mike take over with Deebo Samuel's huge game, just breaking tackles on his way to a touchdown. A.J. Brown, respectable 12, but you expect more from him. Looks like Philly didn't really need to rely too much on their offense. Actually, they relied on Miles Sanders, so he had the big game. Thielen had 11.2. Robinson had a down game. Overall, Rams players were garbage on Monday night. It's like their kryptonite is San Francisco in the regular season. I think they're like 0-6 in the regular season against San Francisco. Herbert kind of back down to earth, 12.5. Gibson, 9.1, which is okay for him. Zach Ertz had a decent, for a tight end, 13.7. Waller, only 3.9. Kareem Hunt, 8.8. Sutton, 13.7. Carlson, strong kicking game, 15.7, helping Mike get the win. On the bench, Dobbins, one of the running backs that stole a lot of the points from Lamar Jackson. Marquise Brown, pretty strong game, 17.8. Tyler Higbee, strong game for a tight end. Should have started him against Waller, but that's okay, you still won. And then for Morgan's team, Jerry Jeudy had 13.3. Would have been better starting him over all your other receivers outside of Sutton, but still not enough to win. So for Morgan, I think Morgan is the only one who hasn't got a win yet. So rooting for you, Morgan. You got this. And then the last one is James versus the Whipping Boy. Now the Whipping Boy is whipping everybody else. He has the high score once again this week, 161.26 to James, even though James had a strong 143. It is a matter of matchups. So this is kind of like a reverse of last year. You know how Aaron had a decent team last year, but his matchups were always against everyone who had the highest. Now Aaron has the highest against James, that might be his highest score of the year. Tom Brady had 30.3, outplaying Mahomes 27.06. Tyreek Hill, 21 points. But still, Justin Jefferson's 26.1. CeeDee Lamb, a strong 18.7. James Jr., only 0.6. McCaffrey had 22.1. But Saquon Barkley was right there with him, 20.3. And then this is where you get the separation. Madison only had 8.6. And again, because no Swift, Jamal Williams, 25.3. So I think he's the touchdown leader right now. That's the only stinky thing about having DeAndre Swift is Williams is going to vulture all the touchdowns. Kittle only had 3.4. Goddard had 9.7. Ayuk had 5.7, but T. Higgins had 21.9. And then the kicker is kind of close, 11 to 13.3. James had a strong defense, 22.2, as San Francisco whooped the Rams. But New York Giants, interesting. You don't ever think of the Giants as being a strong defensive team, but still, he played them and got 27 points. And then if you look at the bench, James' bench continues to look, it's like Dunkin', a bunch of donuts. And then for Aaron's bench, most notable is Clyde Edwards-Helaire with another strong 23.8. So right now, Aaron is swimming in a wealth of strong running backs and receivers, and he is the most scariest team right now, it appears. So good for him. So that's pretty much the matchups for the week. There's like injuries, right? So we just saw someone got put on IR. I know my guy got put on IR, Javonte Williams. What's his name? The one from Atlanta? Cordarrelle Patterson for Jeremy's went on IR. And then there's a bunch of guys who are bruised and bumped up, besides like Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. There's a bunch of guys that are hurt. And then so that's what's going to change throughout the course of the year, is how people are going to get healthy, people are going to get hurt, and it's going to affect how everything is. Just one small thing that I wanted to talk about is the effect of the bench depth. I don't know if you guys noticed it between last year or the last few years, where we had the whole point of having a short bench was having a deeper free agency. Here's what I'm noticing and finding, at least from my perspective, is those extra bench slots aren't necessarily going to all that deep class anymore. It looks the same to me. The only thing is those extra slots are going to other positions like tight ends, quarterbacks, and then whatever else you want to back up besides wide receivers and running backs. So I don't see a huge impact actually in terms of how it affects free agency. It's still a challenge to try to find wide receivers and running backs regardless. The only difference is, like I said, you're filling those slots with extra kicker, extra quarterback, extra tight end. It's been interesting. Anyways, that's all we got. So we'll quit it here. I know it's a late one, but we'll try to get it uploaded. All right, see ya. Bye.